Hi guys, so today I'm going to show you how to make sand comps. So a sand comp basically is a sand compressor, and it takes the 255 entities of sand and compresses them into one block so they can all be shot at the same time and stacked. And also it allows you to control when your sand is actually rendered, when your sand turns into an entity and gets added to the list of order of entities. So today I'm just going to show you guys how to make a carpet comp. So I'll just make a model first so you guys can see how a carpet comp works, and then I'll actually build it. So in a single carpet comp, it's a 3 wide carpet, and it gets pushed back and forth really quickly. So when the sand falls on it, it stays as an entity. To make the fast alternating thing for the carpet, you just do this, and basically it cuts itself off very quickly, and it's just repeating. So we're gonna put it on here, so like that. And you want one side of the piston to be on this redstone, and then the other side is gonna be on the redstone block. So this is off when this is on, and vice versa basically. So then if I do this, you can see that it's going back and forth. And if I drop sand on it, you can see that the sand stays as an entity, and it's still here basically. It's just, that's just a visual thing if it falls through or anything. So basically you have it like that. So you drop all the sand in here, but also you need it to close because you'll have boosters out here. So you'll have boosters under the thing, and when this carpet's moving, it's transparent to the TNT. So the TNT actually exposes the sand through the carpet and boosts it out. So you need this to close because basically, I'll show you on an actual one. You need this part to close before the boosters explode, because otherwise the sand will just get boosted out the top of the sand comp. So if this closes, it guides the sand. So the sand's on the carpet. It gets boosted up here, along here, forwards one by one, just infinity boosters, into here. So it hits this back wall here in front of the sideways booster. So it falls a bit, and then the sideways booster boosts it sideways and up into the barrel. So that's basically what we need to do for the actual cannon. But first I'm just going to remove this temporary wiring for this thing, the hammer booster, because we're going to actually wire that off the sand comp and it's going to be much better. So just remove that first. So usually what people build first on the sand comp is that big booster, which boosts it sideways into the barrel. So you need it to be lined up with the actual barrel. And I'm just going to put it here. I'm going to make it as thin as possible and stack 10 up. If your sand comp's farther away, you're going to need probably more, but it depends on a lot of stuff. So you're going to have then this back wall here, which the sand comp's going to be along here. It's going to boost the sand and hit this back wall. So this is the back wall where the sand goes, and then here's where the booster is. So then above it, you need slabs, because the sand needs to get up, boosted up into the slabs and go into the barrel. And let's just have like a thing like this. And usually you want to have like a 1 block divider, just like this. So one important thing is that if you plan to have a webbust nuke, which probably most of you want nowadays, you basically need the sand comp to be in a certain spot, because you need the nuke compartment to be in a certain spot, because it needs to be next to the hammer, and there needs to be, for most ways of wiring it, there needs to be 3 blocks between them. The boosters are going to get dispensed around here, and then your nuke is going to be on this side, so it's going to get boosted through here, this hole. So you need to make sure that this is in front of the booster. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to, but you need to make your sand comp a certain spot if you're planning on that. So I'm just going to show you guys how I make the actual sand comp part. So you want 2 ladders like this, and those basically just hold up the carpet so they don't break. And you're going to have 2 pistons, normal pistons. They can't be sticky, on either side like this. And then you actually want 2 blocks here, because if you have your sand in this carpet and a booster here, you don't want the sand getting boosted this way. You want it to be guided along here. and it won't be able to go into here because it'll go up first and hit those pistons. And then above the 2 blocks, you want the double piston extender. Like that. Okay, so after that, you want to have the actual wiring along the sides of these pistons for the carpet pistons. For this design, it's going to be ones on top here and then ones under it because you can't put it on top. And you basically now, you want to select the whole thing with World Edit and then stack it as many times as you need. So I'm going to stack 14 for a total of 15 long sand comp. And for 3 seconds, you should start by making a 15 long sand comp. But for a 3 second, you can go as short as 11 and it'll still work without like any sandbot tricks or anything. So I'll make it 12 later, but I'm going to start with 15. So after that, you want another 1 block gap because of how infinity boosters work. This 1 block gap is the same as that 1 block gap right there. And then you want the infinity boosters here, basically. So then you want a ladder here to hold the booster in here. It's the same thing as the carpet here on other infinity boosters. It's just the same exact thing. And then you want to put the boosters along here and then box them in with ladders. And what's kind of important is booster ratios. Like it's not really a ratio, but like the number of TNTs in each set of boosters will vary depending on the length of your sand comp and other stuff. So for 15 long, just do 2 5 longs. But you know, like you don't need another booster here or anything. Like if it's close enough to the end, you don't need any more boosters. So now I'm going to wire the boosters, and these are wired a little differently because you can't put redstone on top of them. What you do is you basically you power it through here, and it powers this redstone, and then that powers this repeater, and that powers this block, which powers redstone on here. So you just wire it behind it, basically. And the same thing with a tick between every booster, so 1 tick difference between every single one. I'm just going to show you how to make this part first. And this is specific for my layout. So if you have a different layout, it probably, like, you might have to do it differently. But for this one, I'm just going to do it like this. And then what a lot of people do now is, like, you can just go up here and honestly and you want to kind of be careful with this part because you don't really want redstone around these things, because like you see if you have redstone here and stuff, you see it's just going to be dispensing TNT when it's on. You don't want any of this redstone to interfere with these boosters, so you might be scared to run redstone over it too because it might bud lock it. So I'm just going to put it on a slab so it doesn't affect anything. And then like this. So you can see the carpet's alternating, and you see it does the same thing as the model. So you need an equal amount of repeaters on each side, and they need to be 1 tick, or else they'll kind of eat up the fast alternating pulse and they won't move the carpets fast enough. So, and I'm just gonna do a little like test basically. So I'm gonna add a bunch of sand to the thing like this, and then manually I'm going to close it like that, and then I'm going to power all the boosters. And we'll just see what happens basically. So just like that, all the sand gets boosted over here, and none of it's left behind. If I break those, there's none left on here. So now you probably don't want this carpet thing to be going all the time. So you can make it so it just turns on for every pulse of the cannon, and it turns off when it's not firing. So to make it stop, you basically just need to power this block around here, so you can power it like from back here. And you want to have basically what's called a pulse extender, which means when you put a quick pulse into it, it'll hold that pulse for a long time, because you need to hold this torch off so the pistons are going for the duration of the entire time the sand's in there. So let's just have something like this, and I can do this basically, and this will power it because it'll power this block and it powers like this. So you need something that's specifically, well, you don't need it like that, but this is a pretty long pulse extender, so it'll be safe that it won't be too short. You don't want the pistons to ever stop, because even if they stop for one tick, it'll delete your sand basically. So if I put a quick pulse into it, basically it turns off the torch for a while, and you see it slowly fades through all the redstone levels. So also, if you put too fast of a pulse through it, it won't work. So I just realized I don't think this will work, because you see, like this, you have to look out for this kind of crap if you're making a small cannon. Like, it's going to power this block, which powers this, which is going to power that booster there prematurely. So I'm just not going to have it on this side. So you can also just have it on this side too, to get it out of the way, like this, and then you can have that, and then something like that. So that'll be the same. And if I just wire up the sand comp now with the random ticks like that, and then I fire, you'll see that the boosters get dispensed, and also this thing turns on for a while. And you need to wait for the boosters to actually explode before the thing turns back off again, or else there'll still be sand on here. So I just put random ticks on the sand comp itself, because I'm gonna wire this booster here and time it first. So first of all, you probably want, like, just for how I do it, you want the wiring to be at that height so you can come one over the redstone thing. And this is gonna be wiring the stuff that opens and closes the piston. So just for now, just remember that. And I'm just gonna wire the booster the same way as I do every one of them. Let's just have one more, because that lines it up. So now you probably know that this booster needs to be a game tick before its respective power, and this booster is actually going to be for the sand power, which is the first power. So remember how this thing was a game tick before the second power? Well, you shoot the sand first because of what I said in like the second video. You shoot the sand first, so this must be a game tick before the first power, so you can shoot all the sand first, and then this is a game tick before the second power. So this first, we know this needs to be game ticked, and also we know that it should be after this infinity booster, because you need to actually boost all the sand here first before this booster thing goes off. And then what's specific is the timing between this last thing here and this thing here. So usually it can be anywhere between 2 and 5 redstone ticks from when this pulses to when this pulses. Between 2 and 5 redstone ticks. So you could just have 2 where it's just straight in like this, 2 after this thing, but that won't work because this booster needs to be game ticked and this thing isn't game ticked. So we need at least 2.5 probably for this cannon. So what I'm gonna do is just add a game tick thing like this. So that's 2.5. So what you need to do is just wire it up like that. So now this is 2.5 after the last infinity booster. So then if I fire, you'll see that we'll see if anything weird happens. So it does, because it looks like this booster is probably interfering with this one. So we're gonna have a ladder here anyways for when the nuke is built. So I'm just gonna put a ladder here to block the thing in, and then we'll just make sure it doesn't go out there. And the reason it would is because it can fly over redstone basically, so it still does. So let's, like, just for this example, I'm just gonna do this. So now what I need to do is time the whole sand comp so this booster lines up to be at the right time, 1 game tick before the first power. So I'm just gonna have a 0 and then select the powers and then select the booster. And you want to keep the timing between these two intact. We've guessed this timing, but you want to keep them, you want to keep it like the same amount. So if for example, this was too early, you don't want to start adding delay here, because that'll change the time between these two by adding ticks between them. So what you want to do to keep these ticks the same is just delay the whole thing from the beginning if it's too late or too early. And if it was too late, you'd remove ticks. So I'm just going to fire and see it's on 6.5, right? So it's way too early, and the first power is on 12, which means you need this on 11.5. So it means I need to add 5 ticks to it, like that. And now we'll see that it's on 11.5. So now it's the right timing. and I'm going to wire off this booster. I'm going to wire the thing that opens and closes the pistons. So you basically need another kind of pulse extender, kind of like a pulse extender like that, to hold the pistons open for long enough to drop the right amount of sand. So first of all, I'm just going to have some delay before I actually open the pistons, because for this kind of cannon, which is not OOE stacking, you need your sand to be rendering after the hammer. So you can't open this at all. You can't start dropping any sand until your hammer is dispensed, basically, or else it won't stack. So basically, I'm just going to have something like this, and what's going to happen is this is basically the pulse extender. It's going to go through every block here and power it, and then it's going to power the redstone next to it for that amount of time. So this pulse extender goes for like 12 ticks or 1.2 seconds, so it holds the pulse for that long. And then you just want this redstone to be on this side of the thing, so because if you do it on this side, it doesn't double extend them. So you put it like that, and then let's just make sure that the thing doesn't open until after the hammer. So the hammer is here like this with the node counter, and then this is here. So if I fire, 1 should be before 2, so 1 is 17.5, so it's plenty. I wouldn't actually remove ticks, because if you start going below this, it might spray. So don't copy the ticks exactly. If you have a different, maybe you have a 1 rev ratio or something, and your hammer's a lot later, you'll probably need more ticks here. So don't just think it's like 8 after the booster and whatnot. Like, it's not always the same. You shouldn't just copy ticks, and cannoning is not about ticks. So let's just try testing it first and put like some sand here, and then it's not going to stack anything because other stuff isn't connected yet, but I'm just going to see. You can have it shoot into a cobweb like that, and then we'll just see what happens. So you can also watch it and see what happens. So you can see that the sand goes here, you saw it fly to here and then get boosted out. And if I clear it, so that's already kind of alarming, because you can see that it's 11, which is an odd number, and I'm pretty sure I had a 2 wide thing of sand here. So that means it's losing sand. So if I put the whole thing, if I put, let's say like 2 rows of sand on here, set 12, which is 60 sand here. So it should put 60 sand into the thing, and let's just see if it does. So if I wait for everything to explode and then clear entities, it puts 34. So it's losing like half the sand. So one of the reasons you could be losing sand in your sand comp is you don't have enough booster. And another reason is the timing between this and this is wrong. So in this case, it's probably actually both of those things are the case. So both of them would solve it, but I'd rather not add more booster TNT. What's happening is the sand gets boosted to here, right? And the booster is all the way down here. And because the last booster here and the sand comp booster are pretty close in timing, they're only 2.5 ticks apart, the sand barely falls a bit before the booster explodes and boosts it into the barrel. So what you could do is make more delay between these two things, so the sand actually gets to fall more, so it falls closer to the booster, and that way it actually gets boosted out when it gets more exposure from the booster because it's closer. But also another way some people can solve it is you can just move the booster up too, so now they're closer too. But that won't work for us because the nuke is going to be coming out here, which means you need the booster below it because you need the nuke to be going up into the barrel. If the booster's next to it or above it, it'll get boosted sideways and not up. So let's just try like increasing the ticks between here. So I'm going to add a tick here, and because I added a tick here, it's going to just delay this thing. So it's going to go from 11.5 to 12.5, which is too late. So if you add a tick there, you need to remove a tick from the whole thing. So this booster actually stays the same. You need to compensate, and then let's try the test again and see if it loses sand again. So this is why sand comps are annoying, because you have to actually experiment. So that time it actually put all 60 out. So we're just going to go with this for now. So now I'm going to actually put some sandstone on here. So for the actual magic sand, and like that. So if I fire, actually there's one weird thing I noticed, which this sand, as you can see, is now getting boosted out. And the reason why is because I unwired this booster, so it's not actually getting powered, and it's getting boosted out by the hammer that's exploding here because it's not going out. So don't worry about that right now. But if I clear entities, you'll see that it put 225 sand into here, that's a good sign. So it's not 255, so it's not enough, but it's a good sign because 225 is divisible by 15, and 15 is the length of the sand comp. So it means that it definitely will drop a number of sand that's divisible by 15, but if the number that comes out is still divisible by 15, that means it probably didn't lose any sand, unless it lost exactly 15, which would be annoying. But so what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna do this trick here where you just stop it from regenning, and you'll see that this is how much sand it's dropping. So if you count 0, it's dropping 15 rows, and that makes sense because 15 rows of 15 sand is 225, so that's how much is coming out. And we need more than that. So for a 15 long, if you drop 17 rows of 15, it's actually exactly 255. So what I'm gonna do is clear the sand and then add another thing of the pulse extender. So let's try, because this is going to hold it open for more ticks now. Let's try one more tick like that, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Or you can just check how much is in the cobweb. And let's just see how much it drops now. So if I count 0, so now it drops 17, but if I clear entities, it's 255. So there we go. So now what I'm going to do is actually wire up the hammer booster again, so it actually boost the hammer out now, because you need the hammer to stack sand. So let's remove the cobwebs, and then what you want to do always is make sure it stacks from the ground up to 255. So you don't want to build your cannon at like Y50 and then have this thing at like just Y100, because then you'll only know if it can stack 100 sand, and if it loses 200, or if it loses like 150 sand out of 255, you'll never know because it's only stacking those 100 sand. So if I rewire this, we had the temporary wiring before, and you need to remember that the time of that booster needs to be 2 redstone ticks after, or sorry, 1 game tick before the second power, right? So it needs to be 13.5, and this thing is 11.5, right? So this booster is just 2 after the sand comp booster, and that makes sense because the powers are 2 different. So this must be 2 difference too, because they're both the same amount before each power. So now if I do that, this red sand thing should stop happening, and then it looks like basically it stacks. So I'm going to try to see if I can actually see the entities, so there you can see it a bit better. The sand comes in, falls, and then the hammer comes over it. So this is usually where beginners have the most amount of problems. So I'm going to go over some basic troubleshooting stuff. So if you made it, like I said, and it's not stacking enough sand, you need to check a bunch of stuff. So first of all, let's just make sure, like if it didn't work, you have to make sure that you have 300 hammer. Sometimes you might need more. If it's only stacking like 3 blocks down there, you should add hammer. But if it's stacking to like, 185 or something, that means it's actually losing sand, because it wouldn't stack to 185 with not enough hammer. So it would only stack like 3 blocks. So you also need to make sure your hammer's the right time. It needs to be 3 ticks after the second power. So let's just check that it's, so the second power and then the hammer. And then you also need to make sure this thing is after the hammer. So it should be 1, 2, 3, 1 at 14, like that. Hammer's 3 after 14 on 17, and then this redstone is after the hammer. So you need to make sure of that, and try other stuff like adding more booster, and also you might have to change your booster ratios. So now I'm just gonna try levering with no sand so it doesn't go everywhere, and we're gonna see like what is wrong with it. So as you can see, this booster kind of comes out, and you can see that it's gonna go everywhere. So the reason why is because of this stupid wiring, because this steel has a little line of sight to that booster. And I haven't talked about alignment yet, but what happens is this booster's here, and it kind of pushes all these TNT into the corner, and the next ones that are dispensed get dispensed to the center of the block, so they kind of are off from the corner one, and the corner one explodes and boosts them out here. So I'm just gonna, like, you just want to block here. You don't want to do it like this. So instead, let's just wire it like this. I have to get rid of those so the thing doesn't interfere. Just like that. And I can't put anything under this block exactly because it's bud powering it. So let's see if it does that again. So there we go. It doesn't. And you just want to make sure nothing's affecting stuff. So like, you want to look at what TNTs are exploding and see if there's any potential like affecting. So now we can test if it stacks every shot with sand. So you just want to, well, first I'm just going to look at it, and we're just going to take a look. So you can see there's sand getting shot out that way, and you need to look at the direction stuff is getting shot out, because that means there's something in that line there that's like in line with it that's boosting it. And in this case, it's the power, because you can see the power has kind of a line of sight, and it's within like, you know, 7 blocks. So let's just put a shield, and if I put a shield, you'll see that immediately it stops boosting that out. And then let's see if it stopped boosting anything back here out. Okay, good. So that fixed that. Now you just want to remove the sand every time and make sure it stacks to 255 every shot. A lot of people's cannons, like, what happens is when you auto it the first shot or two, it stacks to 255, and then it stops stacking to 255. And you need to watch your order of entities. You need to make sure that this is after the hammer. You have to look at it. Like, if you look at it carefully and try to think, like, what's happening to the sand? Is it kind of getting like boosted weird directions? Then you need to figure out why. So it should look like this, where the sand's not going like here or like any weird place. It's just going straight out into this wall and then into the barrel. So that's what you want to see. So now I'm going to upgrade the sand comp to just a 12 long, because 12 long smaller, it's easier to print. So I'm going to show you like another kind of design of sand comps basically. So what I'm going to do is just copy the whole cannon, like select the whole thing and then stack, so I make a copy. So I know I have one that works. So you can feel free to mess around with this one, and it doesn't matter if it breaks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear down the whole thing and make a 12 long sand comp that's thinner. So so I'm just going to build a different type of sand comp. What I built last time was the double piston extender thing, which makes the thing one wider because you have to have this wire here. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make the double-sided thing, so it closes from both sides. Like, you probably don't want to do that on a quick print, but it looks like this. And here are the designs. So you just need to build this or this and stack it back. So I'm going to build the second one. And then in this one, you can have the wires right on top. Again, you need these blocks because so the sand doesn't get out of lane, basically. And then you put this here, and then you just have it like this. And I'm going to just have a 12 long sand comp for this cannon. So stack 11. So it's a lot shorter, and for a 12 long, because it's a different length, you're going to need a different booster ratio, a different amount of booster. So I'm just going to like just tell you some you need to know. For a 12 sand comp, you need 2 4s. For an 11 sand comp, you just need 1 5. So if this was an 11 long sand comp, you just need one thing of 5. And then 13, I think you can get away with 2 4s again, but you might need the second one to be a 5. And in a 14, you need a 4 and a 5. And then 15, you need 2 5s, which is what I just did. 16, you can do 2 5s again. And then 17, I think you might have to do 3 sets of 4. So you know what? Don't memorize that. You should just, what you should do is just figure it out yourself. So what I'm gonna do is kind of build this one quickly, so you can see. Here's the thing, and then like that. So there's the carpet part. So let's wire the sand comp booster. So it goes around, and then, oops, I shouldn't have these blocks here. So I just quickly wired the boosters the same as the other one. So it goes around through here, and then just like the other one, I'm gonna have the same, you know, 3.5 ticks between these two, because that probably will work for this one too, but maybe not. And like, you need these to be blocks because this redstone block is gonna interfere with them. It's kind of cringe, actually. I probably shouldn't have done it like this, but so like that, 3.5 ticks between that and that. So let's just wire the part that opens the piston thing. So like that. This part, so because the sand comp's shorter, we're going to need a longer pulse extender because it needs to drop more rows of sand because it's only just dropping 12. So we need to figure out, I think, yeah. So you can't really drop an odd number of rows with this one because both sides are the same. So ideally you'd want the 252 one because that's exactly how much sand you need. But we're going to do this. We're going to try to drop 22 rows, and then it's going to have a really long pulse extender. If you don't like this style is really easy to change and see like how many ticks it is, but what you can do is do like a 2 comparator clock to hold the pulse like this instead up there. So, but I'm just going to do the repeater pulse extender for now. So I'm pretty sure it needs to be about this long. And actually, let's put it on the other side. So just like that, and then I need to connect the whole sand comp, and then I'll test it. So again, I need to figure out how late the whole thing needs to be to make that 1 game tick before the power. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm pretty sure it's about that many ticks. So now that it's the correct time, let's just see that if it stacks enough sand or not. So as you can see, actually it doesn't. So the first thing I'm gonna check is how much rows of sand it's dropping. So it's only dropping 20 right now. It's only dropping 240, so we should add a tick because you know 20 times 12 is only 240. So this should bring it to 22 because it'll drop another row on each side. So let's see if it drops 22 now, because you need that much for this long sand comp. Count 0. And you see, like, it's stacked to the top. You might think it's working, but it's stacked on top of the sand, so it only needed like this little bit. So you want to remove it every time to make sure. So to actually tell, like, let's actually go again and see that if it works or not. So actually it still doesn't work. It has more, but like it's doing 234, which is not divisible by 12, I don't think. So basically it means that it's probably like the ticks with the booster, or we might need more booster, but I don't think we do because it's kind of a lot. Let's just turn off the hammer boosting part now. So what I'm going to do is change the timing here because we probably need to find a different timing because this probably doesn't work. So I'm going to try 4.5 between these two. So if I add a tick there, I need to remove a tick from the whole sand comp. And let's just try that. And we'll see if it works or not. Wow, okay, so clear entities 267, which there is some falling sand here because it can't be more than 264. So let's do that again. Oh geez, okay. I keep doing that. Wait for those to go away, and 264. So that's how much it should be. And that's because we're dropping 22 rows. So let's turn this thing back on. And actually, we'll just go straight to levering it and see if it stacks every shot now. So basically, as you can see, it stacks every shot. So if you look at it on auto, you'll see that the pistons open and then they close while the boosters are exploding. So you need the pistons to be timed correctly with the boosters exploding. So the pistons should never be open when the boosters are exploding, or else the sand is going to spray out. So you can't have this pulse extender so long that it's dropping, like, it's still dropping sand and the pistons are open while the thing explodes. So it needs to close before exploding, and then it needs to open after they're done exploding. So that's pretty much it for single sand comp. So I'm just going to quickly explain how you'd make a double sand comp. So for a double sand comp, you'd have, you'd actually have two sides like this, and you'd have a 6 wide carpet and boosters on either side with a block between them, and you need blocks, here and in the middle here, so they don't go, so the sand doesn't go in this area here. And then you also need to have a ping pong booster, which is this thing on this side, and the barrel's over there. So you basically need to, it's kind of weird, but you need to have this here. These boosters go off first, all of those like normal, and then this one, and then the big one. So this one goes off and it boosts, because this booster can't reach the ones over here. So you need this to boost the sand here to here, ladder to stop it, and then the big booster boosts it into the thing. So it's, just look at schems if you're confused about how to make one. So I'm just going to show you some stuff about order of entities and explain what order of entities is. So if I set the bottom sand here to red sand and then fire, we're just going to look at what happens, where that red sand goes. And as you can see, it stacks it at the very bottom. So why is that? So basically, those are the sand that started dropping first. The ones on the rows down here started dropping before these rows did. So basically what happens is, when you create entities in Minecraft, for example, if you dispense a TNT or create a falling sand block, you're creating an entity. What happens is every entity is added to a list of all the alive entities. And what happens when you make a new one is it's added to the bottom of the list, the very last item of the list. So that means the top of the list is going to have the oldest entities, the ones that have been around the longest, the ones that spawned in first. So then what happens with the red sand is that they would all end up at the top of the list because they started moving first. They turned into an entity first. So the reason then why it stacks like that, it stacks these first, is because it looks, when sand goes to stack, it looks at the oldest entities there and it stacks those first. So basically how sand stacking works is you have all your sand compressed into one block, and then you have your hammer above it. So when the hammer explodes, all the compressed sand entities get shot to the floor, and what happens when falling sand hits the floor is it turns into a block. So it doesn't just turn into a single block of sand, but what happens is the game picks one of the 255 sand to stack first, and the one that it picks first is it looks at all the entities here on the list. It looks at the list and sees what entities are in this block, and the first item in the list, the first one, the one at the top of the list that's in this block stacks first, which means the one that's the oldest will stack first, which were the red sand here, because they started falling first. They were added to the list first, so they must stack first. It'll place the oldest entity here, and then the 254 remaining sand entities will jump up on top of it, and then it'll just repeat. So it'll just stack the next oldest one. It'll say 254 sand are here, and I need to stack one, and it'll pick the oldest one. So that cycle just repeats all in one game tick, so you don't see it happen, but it just keeps repeating until it runs out of sand, basically. If you just remove like a couple hammer TNT, so it's a little less than what you need, the sand might get to here in the first game tick. It might get all the way down to like Y10 in the first game tick. So then it hasn't hit the floor in the first game tick, and it enters the second game tick of travel and then hits the floor then, because it was going too slow because there wasn't enough hammer. And then it only just stacks a bit. And the reason why this happens, I think, is because the game knows that the sand couldn't be up here, because it was looking in the last game tick and it was like, in the last game tick, the sand was already down here, so it can't be up here. So it only stacks, it only repeats the process of stacking all the way to here, and then it's like, it couldn't have been here because it was already lower than that in the previous game tick. So I'm pretty sure that's why. But if you do it all in one game tick, it knows that the sand can go all the way up to here. So other than that, that's pretty much it for sand comps. If you have trouble with like making it and it's not working, you just need to keep trying to troubleshoot, and because that'll make you a better cannoner if you just keep trying to fix it, and look at other people's schems basically, because you can learn a lot from those, because you can figure out why people do things a certain way. But other than that, that's pretty much it for sand comps, and in the next video I'm going to make a webbust nuke, so I'll see you then.